Happy Halloween! Ken Carson! Yes, let's talk about it. How y'all doing? Welcome to Let's Talk About It, Music Reviews Season 11. How y'all doing? Welcome to the show. Guys, we got a pretty good episode for you today. Not a lot of stuff dropped this week, it's a lot of, just kind of some rap stuff that kind of came out, and that's kind of it, I was really looking around, seeing what was all going to drop, and not a lot really dropped in my opinion. But who did drop, guys, was Ken Carson. Ken Carson has returned to music after dropping his last album. It was like More Chaos, something like that. Well, maybe it was Chaos. I don't remember the album, alright? All I know is that there was some goddamn banger-ass songs off that album. But we got this new song called Yes. I was looking on Twitter seeing if Ken Carson was actually going to drop. And behold, man actually did fucking drop. So, here we are. Yeah, I was pretty excited to see what was going to be coming out. And honestly, right off the bat, guys, let's just get into this goddamn song, Happy Goddamn Halloween. The werewolves are going to be out. The vampires are going to be out. The zombies might come out. And Ken Carson, the guy who sold himself to the devil, the guy who has every single music video, a pentagram on the bottom of him, had to drop right on Halloween. So let's get into this song. Let's start talking about the beat. I'd say overall the beat is pretty good. I like the melodic trap beat. Usually when you can, use all these different synths, use some nice drums that sound really goddamn fire, you're going to have something that's pretty explosive here. I like the fact that this isn't your, typical, where it's just, a simple trap beat, but then you layer some synths down. No, this actually is like a synth melodic ass beat. It's got some melody to it. I like that. Sounds really good in my opinion, and it really honestly goes pretty fucking hard. So, I even think the drums, I even really think the drums sound really good on here. The way they kind of have, they kind of stop, they kind of go, they have their moments where they kind of switch up. I like how those hi-hats really got their own sound too. That's pretty goddamn fire. And overall, I really do enjoy the sound of this song. I really do prefer this type of sound. If you are going to make a song that is kind of, the Playboi Carti formula, this is what I kind of prefer. I prefer that melodic-ass trap sound that just kind of sneaks up on you, kind of sounds really goddamn fire to listen to. And I'd say overall Ken Carson had a pretty good, beat selection here. Now, is the verses, is the hook on that kind of level? And we'll get into that next, because actually, this is almost a 3-minute ass track song. So you have an almost 3-minute song from Ken Carson. So you're wondering, how is he going to sound on here? We actually got a couple of verses on here. We actually got a whole ass hook. This ain't your simple 2-minute ass, 1-minute ass song. This actually has got some life to it, which is pretty awesome in my opinion. Now, we'll talk about the hook, because we might as well just get into the hook, because the hook is honestly one of the main addicting parts about this song. I really think the vocals on the hook are pretty good in my opinion. I like the melodic Ken Carson vocals. They actually sound pretty good. Paired up with that nice synth, that nice ass trap beat, you're just going to get a really good combination here. And I like how he kind of switches up his flow on the hook too. He has this one flow that he does, and then he switches to another flow. And I think that's just going to make the hook more addicting to listen to, make the hook, way more enjoyable, makes you want to listen to it over and over and over again. It's like if I went to a graveyard and, I was doing some devil ritual. I was trying to get the devil to come out of a grave or some bullshit like that. This is what I want to play. I want to play this song right here so the fucking devil comes out of the damn grave and probably kills me or something like that. So I really do overall enjoy the hook. I think the hook can easily get stuck in your head. I think it's got a nice, melody and all that stuff to it. Sounds really good. Vocals are really good. Overall, no complaints about the hook in my opinion. I think the hook is absolutely goddamn fantastic. Now, the verses is what we got to talk about. I'm going to say this, at this point, I've probably listened to a lot of Ken Carson music at this point. Now, have I listened to the past albums? No, I haven't. And I probably won't. But I'll say this, what I've heard from that last album, this right here is already a really good step up from what we had from before. I like how the verses have so many different flow switches on this song. I think when you have, all these different flow switches that sound absolutely goddamn fire, it just makes you want to keep listening to the verse over and over and over again. And I really do enjoy that. I think, Ken Carson does a really good job of having some good flow switches, but having some good vocals, having moments where he kind of hells out his vocals too, which is pretty fire. And then you got that second verse, am I expecting the same type of, verse from the first one? Yes, I'm kind of expecting that from a Ken Carson song, but nah. Man comes in here with the second verse and starts rapping a little bit faster. We get some faster flows coming in. We get moments where, that synths can really start playing out. You hear those synths really raging in the background, but you got Ken Carson, flowing on here, providing some great value there. Switching up his vocals constantly, just adding a lot of value to this goddamn song, which is pretty goddamn fire in my opinion. When we talk about this song, guys, when we talk about Ken Carson, yes, instrumental is definitely on point. I really enjoy this melodic-ass beat. It's beautiful. Sounds good, sounds great. Can easily get stuck in your head. This is a perfect song, too, if we're getting into the colder season. I mean, when you got a really good melodic song like this, it can easily just get stuck in your head. Then you got Ken Carson having a really enjoyable hook. Ken Carson hooks are, either good, they either get stuck in your head, or they're not that good. This one's actually pretty good, and I think it could easily get stuck in your head. The two verses were actually really good quality, and I like how, the first verse doesn't sound the same as the second one. The second verse is a second goddamn verse, which is, such an underrated thing in the landscape of 2025 music. Every goddamn artist just needs to make one verse and one good hook and call it a goddamn day. Makes no fucking sense to me. But hey, I'm glad Ken Carson ain't doing none of that bullshit. So yeah, guys, overall I really did enjoy this song. I'm easily going to give this song a 7 out of 10. 7 out of 10, guys. What y'all think about it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I don't know. Let me know. And if you're on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, wherever you get your podcast at, make sure you follow, turn on notifications, guys. And hey, look, have a really good, happy Halloween. All right, it's Halloween night when this episode comes out. Enjoy your time, guys, and I will see y'all later. You have a good one. I'll be back the next fucking day, all right? I'll be back November fucking 1st, so I ain't going to be gone that long. So I'll see y'all later. You have a good one. Bye.